So we've got a really interesting afternoon here at Track 2, as they're calling it, here at this amazing museum. I was here last night. It's brilliant, and I know it's the brainchild of the mayor, I think, and I know for any of you that are residents in Nîmes, that amphitheatre is just astonishing. I've got to have a proper look at that later on. Okay, let's deal with what we are talking about first, which is the thorny issue, I would call it, of certification for the travel industry. It has been a thorny issue for a while, but today we're going to look at the obstacles and the solutions as to how we can get through this. Now, just to remind you a little bit quickly, just give you a tiny bit of background. And I know that Randy, who I'm going to bring up on stage in a second, is also going to tell us more about this, but the Global Sustainable Tourism Council manages global standards for sustainable travel, known as the GTSC criteria. Also provides international accreditation for sustainable tourism certification bodies, and they have destination criteria for public policymakers and destination managers, and industry criteria for hotel and tour operators. Now, what we're going to find out is that the criteria for all the different sectors has varying results and varying reactions. But the whole point is that it is now trying to develop a common language that everyone can understand, and it's designed to be adapted to local conditions and cultures. We know how difficult it is to number one, set standards, number two, follow standards, number three, to get certification for those standards. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But the GSTC has got, obviously, it's a UN WTO thing, isn't it? It's backed by them and it has their backing, so that's very important. It was originally aimed at hotels, I believe, but now, and now it's trying to get on the board with the big boys, and we're going to talk about that in a second as well. So let me, without any further ado, let me bring on stage, please, Randy Durband, who is from the he's in fact the CEO of the GSTC. Please welcome him on stage. And Albert Salman, who is the CEO of Green Destinations. Welcome. Okay, I think we should get to basics, frankly, at the beginning, Randy, because consumers, I don't think, are clear. So, what is being certified? Who should be certified? By whom? And what does it mean anyway?
Well, who's getting certified?
Oh, you want? It might be a switch there, is there?
At first, I thought it was on.
Are we on now?
No, here we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, as you said, we're working with hotels and tour operators, primarily and destinations, working closely with Albert and Green Destinations. There is some certification in other aspects, convention centers and this and that, but not a lot. Subsector by subsector, in some cases, we don't really even have global standards. So we're looking to expand into MICE, into attractions and so forth. But what's been certified since 1990, we had the first eco label on hotels. And there's a plethora of labels on hotels. We have in our directory more than 200, creating tremendous confusion in the marketplace because there's so many brands, and so that's a bit of a problem. Tour operators, just a handful. Destinations, just a small amount. So those are kind of the key things that we're talking about. There's a little bit more, but it's basically those three areas.
But I've actually got this list here, I think I've seen it, where you've got sector by sector, and here we go, look. And it actually, this is on your website, isn't it? And hotel accommodation, yes, there is criteria. And actually, they're doing better, aren't they? Hotels are being more compliant, yeah, that's good. Tour operators, likewise, yeah. But then you get to things like MICE, meetings, incentives, and all that stuff. There are no standards, no set standards, is that right?
Well, there's no globally recognized standards. There's ISO 21021, and there's this and that. Events Industry Council in the United States has a standard. But we've been talking to the industry for several years, and there's a real desire on their part for us to use our model of creating highly inclusive standards, because we pride ourselves in an incredibly inclusive process. When we create the criteria, we put out a massive call to all 6 populated countries, to public sector, private sector, academia, everybody. You can go onto our website any minute and add your input for future revisions. So nobody touches us in terms of being a global standard with inclusive input. So because of that, because of what we've done painstakingly for 15 years for hotels, tour operators, and later destinations, there is this desire that some members of the industry have asked us to create them for MICE, and our board has decided to go forward with it in 2023 to create GSTC MICE criteria and attractions.
Then there's also the transport sectors. Now, aviation has IATA guidelines, but no standards.
Well, IATA and ICAO, I think, have guidelines. I'm not sure we could call them standards. Maybe I'm wrong. We decided to completely stay out of that space because they're there, and our founders said, we want you to focus on these areas, especially with hotels with that plethora. So I don't know that you could call them standards, but also cruise lines don't have standards.
And in fact, I think you told me before, they weren't even, cruises and airlines weren't even part of the Paris Agreement.
No.
No, it's just bizarre, isn't it?
The philosophy behind that is because IMO for cruise and ICAO and IATA are quasi-UN agencies. I think that's been the logic, but they're not in the Paris Climate Accord.
Right. So let's just deal quickly with what the problems are to buying into this whole thing about certification with the people that you deal with.
Yeah, I would say we're really struggling with certification for these reasons. One, first of all, a business has to be motivated to be sustainable. Before you can get certified, you need to be sustainable in a holistic way. Even if you're very motivated as a business, holistic is so difficult. It's so challenging. We like to say as a rule of thumb, if a business is motivated and they haven't really done much on sustainability, they need 3 years to consider certification. If they're a long way down the path, they can perhaps do it in a year. But it's a rigorous process. So that's one thing. So already if you're motivated, it's not easy. Secondly, I would say very little of the industry is motivated. You know, when we come to conferences like this, we hear from big brands that have a major brand to manage and risk to manage, but, you know, leisure travel is so fragmented. I've been on the board of directors, the European Tour Operators Association, every committee with USTOA, Canadian Travel Commission, PATA, Asia. I've been in travel for 40 years. It's so bloody open that every time we'd see all these problems, you know, and all these trade associations, most of our problems occurred from some brand we never even heard of. Leisure is extremely fragmented and it's so wide open. So I think that in general, the travel industry is not very motivated to be sustainable first point. So then to get certified, that's a small elite group. And then thirdly, I would say there's demand for sustainability by the consumer. I was just talking about the businesses. But those businesses look at demand for sustainability for the consumers, for the travelers, and I think they really misunderstand the consumer demand. The consumer, the traveler, is not asking for sustainability at point of purchase. Let's just pause and reflect for a moment. When we all buy travel, what are we looking at? We're so caught up in the OTAs and the whole, even if you book direct, it's like, what's the best price I can get for that best quality hotel or that best, you know, the flight that's most convenient to me? It's price, it's price, it's price at time of booking. But interestingly, there's now data showing up in satisfaction demand from the traveler that they expect certification, they don't expect certification, they expect sustainability. Last year's Booking.com survey of 27 countries with 30,000, pretty good, Booking does a good job of global surveys. 53% of travelers globally said they get annoyed now when the service provider is not green enough. That came out of nowhere. And I think the industry has not noticed that. They don't ask the questions about sustainability. They monitor TripAdvisor. They don't measure sustainability, most of them. And so I think we're going to see a wave because everywhere we go in the world, younger generation is angry. Greta Thunberg is not alone. Everybody 35, 40 and younger is a little bit angry at previous generations. I think we're going to see a tipping point where travelers will start talking about it, but they don't talk about it a lot. I think it's good for us to admit that, even if people who are passionate about sustainability, to admit it, that at point of purchase, they're not asking for it. So I think this has to be driven by businesses. Maybe we'll come to solutions later.
Yeah.
So there's another structural problem is that what we have found, and this is a little bit of controversial issue, but when UNEP, and it was UNEP and UNWTO that created us. UN Foundation in Washington, D.C. paid for us to have a secretariat, but it was UNEP and UNWTO that together that really designed us. They wanted us to create global standards, and they wanted to give us to produce guidance, as you've said, to good certification. What we have found in these 15 years is that many of the entities you might in this room call a certification body is not truly a certification body, because they violate international norms for what is certification by coaching a business to improvement. You have to have coaching over here. Certification is a judgment. You have to have auditors who are impartial, who are separate from the process. So you don't coach to improvement and then give a star on the paper.
It's like your driving instructor being your tester as well at the end of the...
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there's those structural issues. And then finally, I would say that everybody wants the prize. They want the mark, but they don't want to do the hard work, or they have the humility to admit that they're not there yet. And to be holistic, to honor the full criteria, is not easy. So what we're now talking to a lot of businesses and governments is give yourself a pathway. Say in 5 years we want to be here, 3 years we want to be here. Let's celebrate landmark progress along the way. But I think those of us involved in the certification community have been too guilty of just saying, push all the way to the top, and we believe passionately in only rigorously rewarding those to reach the top. But we need to give the pathway to get there. And so we kind of changed our messaging to help businesses move up.
Okay. So Albert, you are a certification body, and you're not one of those that coaches them and then marks them afterwards. No. But okay, explain, number one, what Green Destinations is about and how you see certification.
Yeah, I'm a little more optimistic about certification than Randy. I think actually there is no justification not to start the process. Forget about the market value of it. It's limited. When you're a certified hotel, you'll be getting a tag on Google Travel and Booking.com like eco-friendly. But for the other sectors, it's not yet true. So forget about the market value. But think about the inherent value, the intrinsic value of actually starting to realize in which you're actually performing well and in which you're not performing well. What is your agenda for improvement? Do you have one? Do you need one? And what's your strong points that you can actually communicate to your travelers, to your future clients, with a reference to a certifying body? So we do, as Green Destinations, certification of destinations, even of whole countries if they're very small, and of DMOs, in principle also of national tourism organizations like DMOs, any tourism business in travel and tourism, if they're actually comparable, if they're relevant, if they're sort of covered by the GTSC industry standard, and also travel products and events. So start with the process. We can actually, refer you to people who can be your coaches, and start considering what's your strong points, what's your weak points, and when you have realized that you have many strong points, then you can proceed with certification. But I would say start with the process, use the GTSC criteria, and there is no reason why you shouldn't, because the traveler expects you to be offering sustainable travel products.
But Randy just said that there's no motivation on the part of a lot of businesses or destinations to be involved in this. What are you saying? That they are motivated? They do want to get involved?
A lot of businesses actually. We've been contacted by one of the biggest attractions, theme parks in Europe. They said, we're not sure whether we actually are eligible or suitable already far enough for certification, but we want to become more sustainable, and we know that there are criteria, and that you have GD criteria, and that you implement also the GSC criteria. So how can we start? So there is, I think, yes, there is interest to get started. We noticed that.
And let's work this out, because you're saying that people at the lower, normal people, consumers, tourists, say they want it, but they're not going to go, they expect it to be given to them. Is that fair? And that it should be the bodies at the top. And even when it comes down to the little guys, for instance, restaurateurs, they will say, well, why we don't want to spend money doing this, because it should be the big guys leading this whole thing. So is that essentially one of the problems?
That's actually the case, and because we started from the destination point of view, and we say destinations, you can't be sustainable, you can't promote yourself as a sustainable destination unless your business sector joins the sustainability principles implementation. And it's not just the Hiltons and the big hotels. No, it's the small hotels, the small businesses, rooted in the local community. So we have developed ways let's say step 1, 2, 3, towards the GST certification for micro businesses and SMEs that can actually be certified for from 100 euros per year. Okay, is that an obstacle? No, it's not.
So, Randy, an interesting thing that I think that's happened to you is that hotels and inbound tour operators are good. They tend to be interested. Mm-hmm. Destinations and outbound operators not so good about certification. Can you explain why that is?
Well, I would say that the inbound tour operators, DMCs, have largely been driven by, in 2016, WWF, working with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, convinced them to do preferred contracting for shore excursions. And as soon as Royal Caribbean did that, they said in their contracting that when the bids for the land tour operator at a shore excursion, when price and quality are similar, they'll give the contract to the entity that's certified GSTC criteria. And they exceeded expectations about how quickly they moved. So now this tour operator said, oh, nobody ever asked me for certification before. Well, now Royal Caribbean just granted you a 3-year contract instead of a 2-year contract, and you got it because of the other guy. Wow. Certification isn't very expensive all of a sudden. So, we've really been talking to a lot of businesses. So happy to see Nicole here with Amex GBT. They joined on GSTC a year and a half ago. Other major brands are looking at this preferred contracting model. It's proven in every other sector. Kimberly-Clark made FSC famous when they went all in. FSC was nothing for its first 7 years.
Wood
and paper.
But yeah.
And Unilever made MSC on fish and seafood great. We need the industry to drive this. We created the framework for the industry. Now it's up to the industry to use the bloody thing and put it to work as it's designed, because it's the most credible structural foundation. And this is extremely important now because, the 10 years of ESG growth, ESG, still less than half of ESG reporting has external verification. More and more businesses are realizing, and their lawyers are realizing. In UK, the CMA, the Competitive Markets Authority, is looking hard now at greenwashing and travel and tourism. So you have to get your house in order. You need a credible system. Well, there's not much more credible than what we've built. So I think if industry pushes it, and governments need to push it. We've been spending a tremendous amount of time the past year with Singapore and Turkey, as Turkey now wants to be known.
Now, Turkey is an interesting case. Just tell me a little bit about Turkey. What's happened there? They bought into this.
Yeah, when everybody in the world had a health safety program during COVID, necessarily to have some tourism alive, Turkey did it very methodically with ISO-based system, very methodical system with proper auditing and proper controls. They built that operation. They created a quasi-agency controlled by the Ministry of Tourism. And they said afterwards, let's keep this all in place and let's do green tourism in a very methodical way. Turkey is about to announce something that I think will blow you away. They're mandating, is it still on?
I'm not sure.
They're mandating that a hotel will get certified to our scheme by 2030, and there's steps along the way. When you think about the carrot and the stick, Singapore has a carrot. They're subsidizing the certification, and they're subsidizing the education to get to the certification. So Singapore, we've been working with the carrot. Turkey has the stick, and they passed a law on tourism where the Ministry of Tourism will have the power to revoke a business license. So I think when we see governments look, it's amazing to me that governments in tourism have not done what every other sector has done. In every other sector, they look at their National Standards Board, who are experts in standards, and, for safety and health. That's all clean in every industry, but for some reason, tourism has just ignored international norms for certification.
Do you believe that by Turkey doing this, and I'm going to ask this to both of you, and I want to talk about the website in a second as well, do you believe by Turkey doing this, they will gain competitive advantage as a tourism destination in the future?
I think they will, because everybody really wants it, but nobody's known how to make this happen. And Turkey comes in with this strong model to make it happen. I've got to believe Greece and Spain are going to, in the Mediterranean world, I can't imagine them not.
Do you know what? For the first time, I've got time to ask if anybody wants to ask questions. So please have anything in mind to do that. If you have got a question, raise your hand, please, and say who you are. We'll come to you in 1 second. I just want to ask about, thank you. I want to ask you, yes, Albert, about the website that you think will help, because marketing, you think, is one of the issues here, right?
Yeah, and connecting to the last question, will Turkey have benefit of doing this? Only when they communicate it well. I mean, the certified status does not give sufficient market advantage. So you need actually to have a more sophisticated website, but also social media and everything, marketing program that should be independent from the certifiers, that actually tells, so it should be all the media people in this conference that perhaps could sit together for a minute and say, well, can we make this? To actually give meaning and impact to whatever hotels or destinations have reached, have performed under, and that's been confirmed by the certification. And that's what we need to give certification a market impact.
And you think that the media should play more of a role?
Yes.
How?
Well, perhaps a sustainable tourism initiative by a partnership of media partners. And they could also benefit from that as a partnership. So like we are actually promoting sustainability and telling you as a traveler what's real sustainability, so we can forget about all these hundreds of websites that claim to be green, and it's mainly greenwashing.
Yeah, the greenwashing, horrible greenwashing thing comes back again, doesn't it? I've just been told I am short of time, but I did offer to have a question from the audience. Can we get a microphone to the?
Yeah, I think it's a good auditorium. So
Okay, great.
So, I'm representing a delegation, small delegation here from the Republic of Moldova, really tiny destination in the Eastern Europe, which is now under these hurdles with the war, etc. And I picked up on what you just said, both of the speakers, on the certification of the destinations. So besides the SMEs or the participants to the value chain that want to be certified, in case if they want, under some sustainability standards that exist, there are also destinations, and we are a small, tiny destination, as you just called, that as part of the public policy that is in the making now for approval, one of the pillar is actually to become a sustainable destination. So how to achieve that? Looking at what is available on the international advisory market, let's say, and the UNWTO standards, we understand that there might be also this chance to maybe do like a hybrid based on the Singapore and the Turkey example, so that we don't have too much influence on the state agencies or the NTAs, but design a code of sustainability or sustainability practices that would be really applicable and customized on the model and the situation we are. Then we can design a list of target indicators that we can measure to measure our progress in implementing this. But we have still a question that we cannot answer is who can actually be a third party so that we are more credible on the global market, that could actually come and certify that Moldova does what it has said in the code of conduct and it is progressive against the roadmap of indicators.
Okay.
And maybe one of your organizations could also help us to design and develop this code of sustainability. If you have such examples, we would be glad.
Let's answer
Sounds
that
like the
question.
Slovenia model. Albert's involved in what we call in the industry the Slovenia model, where they have a national program, but they bring in the expert certification bodies. So it's a big topic. We'd be happy to help and follow up, but I think it's too big to
It's too big.
comment too
But,
much.
I think this is one of those let's talk afterwards type situations. But I mean,
But a hybrid,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of creative ways to do this.
Okay. Sadly, we run out of time, and we do need to move on to the next session. I really want to thank Albert and Randy. I think Randy, you're sticking around for the next.
I'm on the next one.
You're on the
so
next one too, aren't you? Yeah. But thank you very much indeed to these two gentlemen, because they really care about what they're doing, and I think it will make a massive difference.